James hadn't planned on being a gas station security guard at 47. Life had taken unexpected turns. After 20 years in the Army, he found himself standing watch at a small petrol station on the edge of Oakfield, where the highway stretched into darkness. The night was quiet. Too quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he made his rounds, checking doors and windows with practiced precision. His boss, Mr. Wilson, often said he was too careful, but old habits die hard. James carried himself with the same discipline that had kept him alive during his service. The petrol station was modest, just 6 pumps outside and a small shop selling snacks, drinks, and basic supplies. At this late hour, the only other person around was Tom, the night clerk. Tom was a skinny 19-year-old with messy brown hair who was working to save money for university. He sat behind the counter, reading a textbook when there weren't any customers. "All quiet tonight, Tom?" James asked, returning from his outside check. "Yes, Mr. James, just that lorry driver who stopped for coffee an hour ago." James smiled at being called Mr. Despite his attempts to get Tom to drop the formality, the young man was determined to show respect. "Good lad. Keep studying. Knowledge is something no one can take from you." Tom nodded eagerly. He looked up to James, often asking questions about his military days. James rarely shared details, but he did offer life advice that Tom treasured. The clock showed just past midnight. When they first heard it, a distant rumble growing louder. Motorcycle engines, several of them approaching fast. Through the large windows, James watched as 5 motorcycles pulled into the forecourt, their headlights sweeping across the lot. The bikes were large and loud, customized with chrome and leather. The riders matched their machines. Big men in leather jackets, some with beards, all with an air of menace. James felt something shift inside him, that familiar alertness from his Army days when danger approached. He'd seen groups like this before. Sometimes they were just loud but harmless. Other times they were looking for trouble. His instincts told him this might be the latter. "Tom," James said quietly, moving closer to the counter. "Remember what I showed you about the silent alarm?" The young man's eyes widened, but he nodded. "I'm not saying you'll need it. Just be ready." The leader of the group dismounted first, a tall, heavy-set man with a thick beard and arms covered in tattoos. He took off his helmet and hung it on his handlebars, then signaled to the others. They spread out, with 3 remaining outside near the bikes while the leader and another man walked toward the shop entrance. James positioned himself casually near the drink coolers, giving him a clear view of both Tom at the till and the entrance. He stood straight, hands relaxed at his sides, watching. The bell above the door jingled as the 2 men entered. The leader strode in first, scanning the shop with cold eyes. His companion, shorter but muscular, with a shaved head, followed, letting the door swing shut behind them. "Evening, gentlemen," James said calmly. "Can I help you find anything?" The leader looked James up and down, taking in the simple security uniform, the graying hair, the weathered face. There was a moment of assessment, then dismissal, as if James had been weighed and found insignificant. The leader ignored him completely, walking directly to the beer cooler. He grabbed several 6-packs without a word. His companion moved toward the snack aisle, pocketing items without pretense. Tom's face had gone pale as he watched. James gave him a small nod. "Stay calm." Outside, the other bikers were growing restless. One appeared to be tampering with the petrol pump. Another was looking through the window of a parked car. The leader approached the counter, slammed the beer down, and finally spoke. "This is all I need to pay for tonight. We'll be taking the rest." His voice was gruff, confident, the voice of someone used to intimidation working in his favor. "Sir," James said, stepping forward, "you need to pay for all items you're taking." The leader turned slowly, seeming almost amused that someone would challenge him. He looked James up and down again. "What are you going to do about it, old man? There's 5 of us and 1 of you." Tom's hands were shaking slightly as he stood behind the counter. The biker with the shaved head had moved behind him, eyeing the till. James sighed quietly. Some people never understood that true danger rarely announces itself with noise and swagger. He'd faced far worse than these men in places most people couldn't find on a map. "Tom," James said evenly, never taking his eyes off the leader. "I think we might need that alarm now." The end. "You're right about the numbers," James said quietly. "But you're wrong about the odds." Something in his voice made the leader pause. For the first time he really looked at James, at the way he stood balanced and ready, at the calm in his eyes that wasn't fear but certainty. The air in the small shop seemed to grow heavy. Outside, the three remaining bikers continued to loiter, near the pumps, unaware of the tension building inside. "Last chance," James continued. "Put everything back, pay for what you want, and leave." The leader's face turned red with anger. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by an older security guard at a petrol station in the middle of nowhere. "Do you know who we are?" the leader asked, stepping closer to James. "We're the Road Wolves. We do what we want around here." James didn't move backward. He didn't flinch. His voice remained steady. "The name doesn't matter to me. What matters is what happens next." Tom had moved his hand beneath the counter, his finger hovering over the silent alarm button. His heart was pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. The leader looked back at his friend with the shaved head and gave a small nod. The shorter man moved toward James, reaching into his pocket. "I would reconsider that," James said. The man with the shaved head pulled out a small knife, holding it low by his side. "Old man thinks he's tough," he sneered. The leader laughed. "Last chance for you, Grandpa. Walk away now, or you won't be walking away at all." Outside, one of the bikers had noticed something was happening inside. He nudged his friends and pointed. They started moving toward the door. James sighed. He didn't want this. He never wanted violence again after leaving the army. But he also wouldn't allow these men to threaten a young lad just trying to earn his way through school. "Tom," James said calmly, "press that button now." Tom hit the silent alarm. The system would alert police without making any sound in the store. The man with the shaved head lunged forward, knife extended. What happened next was so fast that Tom could barely follow it. James stepped to the side, caught the man's wrist, and in one fluid motion, redirected his momentum. The knife clattered to the floor as the man found himself face down on the linoleum. Arm twisted behind his back, James's knee holding him firmly in place. The leader stood frozen in shock for a moment, then roared with anger. He charged forward like a bull. James released the first man just in time to deal with the new threat. Instead of trying to match the leader's strength, James used it against him, sidestepping and guiding the larger man's charge. The leader crashed into a rack of crisps, sending packets flying everywhere. The shop door flew open as the three men, from outside, rushed in. They stopped short at the sight of their friend struggling on the floor. "He's just one old man," the leader shouted, getting back to his feet. "Get him!" James positioned himself carefully, keeping all 5 men in his field of vision. He moved with surprising speed for a man his age, using the shop's narrow aisles to his advantage, making it difficult for more than one person to approach him at a time. One of the newcomers tried to grab him from behind. James ducked, twisted, and the man found himself thrown over James's shoulder, landing hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. Another came at him with a chain. James caught it, on his forearm, ignoring the pain as it wrapped around, then pulled sharply. The biker, not expecting such strength, stumbled forward into a precise strike that left him dazed on the floor. The fourth man hesitated, looking to his leader for guidance. The leader had recovered and was circling, looking for an opening. "Who are you?" the leader demanded. "Just a man doing his job," James replied. Tom watched in amazement from behind the counter. He had never seen anyone move like James, efficient, precise, with no wasted motion. It wasn't like the fighting in movies. There were no flashy kicks or punches. Every movement James made had purpose, neutralizing threats without causing unnecessary harm. In the distance, the sound of police sirens began to wail. The bikers who were still standing looked toward the door, uncertain. "It's over," James said. "The police will be here in minutes. You can be waiting for them on the floor or sitting, calmly, but either way, you'll be explaining yourselves." The leader glared at James, hatred in his eyes. But something else was there too. A grudging recognition. He had underestimated this old man completely. "This isn't finished," the leader growled. "For tonight it is," James replied. The sirens grew louder. Blue lights flashed in the distance, coming down the highway toward the petrol station. The end. The police arrived with flashing lights and wailing sirens. 2 patrol cars pulled into the petrol station forecourt, officers quickly getting out with hands near their weapons. Through the shop windows they could see the aftermath of what had happened. Bikers sprawled on the floor, shelves knocked over, snacks scattered everywhere. The first officer through the door was Bill Thompson, a stocky man with 20 years on the force. He took in the scene with experienced eyes. "Everyone stay where you are," he commanded, though the bikers on the floor had little choice in the matter. James stood calmly near the counter, hands visible at his sides. Tom remained behind the till, still looking shocked by everything that had happened. "They tried to rob us," Tom blurted out. James stopped them. Officer Thompson looked at James more carefully, noticing his security uniform and composed demeanor. "You did this?" he asked, gesturing to the men on the floor. "They left me no choice," James replied simply. The second officer, a younger woman, named Mary Parker, was helping the bikers to their feet one by one, putting handcuffs on them. The leader winced as he was pulled upright, his pride clearly hurting more than his body. "He's not normal," the leader said, nodding toward James. "He's some kind of... I don't know what he is." Officer Thompson studied James more closely. There was something in the way the security guard held himself, something in his eyes. "Military?" he asked. James nodded. "Army, 20 years. Special Forces?" Thompson pressed. James didn't answer directly. "Just doing my job tonight, officer." The leader of the bikers stared at James with a mixture of anger and confusion. "We're the Road Wolves," he said, as if that should mean something. "Nobody stands up to us around here." "First time for everything," James replied quietly. As the police led the bikers outside to the waiting patrol cars, Officer Thompson stayed behind to take statements from James and Tom. The young clerk was still buzzing with excitement. It was amazing. They all came at him and he just... Tom made some quick hand gestures. They didn't stand a chance. Thompson nodded, writing in his notebook. "I'll need you both to come down to the station tomorrow to make formal statements." He looked at the mess in the shop. "Do you need any help cleaning up?" "We'll manage," James said. "Thank you." After the police left with the 5 bikers in custody, Tom turned to James with wide eyes. "You never told me you were... whatever you were in the Army." James began picking up packets of crisps from the floor. "It wasn't relevant until tonight. But you could have been killed. There were 5 of them." James shook his head. "I was never in real danger, Tom. Men like that rely on fear and numbers. Take those away and they're just angry people making bad choices." They worked together cleaning the shop. Tom couldn't stop talking about what had happened, replaying each moment with growing excitement. James listened patiently, occasionally correcting details when Tom's imagination made the fight more dramatic than it had been. "Will they come back?" Tom asked suddenly, pausing with a broom in his hand. "For revenge?" James considered this. "It's possible, but not tonight, and next time they'll think twice." As they finished restoring order to the shop, Mr. Wilson, the owner, arrived. He had been called by the police and had driven straight over despite the late hour. He was a short, balding man with kind eyes and a permanent worried expression. "Good heavens," he exclaimed, looking around the shop. "Is everyone all right? Tom? James?" "We're fine, Mr. Wilson," Tom assured him. "Thanks to James, you should have seen him. He was like..." "I'm just glad no one was hurt," James interrupted. "The police have them in custody now." Mr. Wilson looked relieved. "When the police called, I feared the worst. Armed robbery is becoming too common these days." He turned to James. "They said you handled the situation?" James was amazing. Tom jumped in before James could answer. "They had knives and he disarmed them like it was nothing." Mr. Wilson looked at James with new respect. "I always had a feeling about you, James. From the day I hired you. Something solid about you." He reached out and shook James's hand firmly. "Thank you. I don't know what might have happened without you here." James accepted the handshake but seemed uncomfortable with the praise. "Just doing what you pay me for, sir." As Mr. Wilson checked the till and Tom continued excitedly recounting details of the incident, James walked outside for a moment. The night air was cool and clean. The police cars were gone now, the petrol station quiet again. He looked up at the stars, thinking about his choices, about how life's path sometimes circled back in unexpected ways. 20 years in the army, fighting in distant lands, only to face danger in a small petrol station in his hometown. Perhaps there was meaning in that, he thought. Perhaps this was exactly where he needed to be. The end word about what happened at the petrol station spread quickly through the small town of Oakfield. By the next morning, everyone seemed to know that James Taylor, the quiet security guard, had single-handedly defeated 5 members of the Road Wolves motorcycle gang. James noticed the change immediately. When he walked into Betty's cafe for his morning cup of tea, the usual morning chatter stopped. All eyes turned to him. Betty herself came out from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "So it's true then?" she asked, her round face bright with excitement. "About last night at Wilson's petrol station?" James felt his cheeks warm slightly. "It's been exaggerated, I'm sure." "Tom says you fought off 5 men with knives," said George, the postman, who was enjoying his breakfast at the counter. "Tom has a good imagination," James replied, taking a seat in his usual corner booth. Betty brought him his tea without being asked, strong with just a splash of milk the way he liked it. "Well, whatever happened, it's about time someone stood up to those road wolves. They've been causing trouble up and down the county for months." James sipped his tea, uncomfortable with the attention. He had never sought recognition, not even during his military days. He did what needed doing, nothing more. After breakfast, James walked to the police station to give his formal statement. Officer Thompson was waiting for him, looking tired from a long night shift. "The leader's name is Robert Big Rob Miller," Thompson said as he led James to a small interview room. "He's got a record: assault, theft, intimidation. The others are his followers. They've been growing bolder lately." James nodded but said nothing. "Care to tell me where you learned to handle yourself like that?" Thompson asked as they sat down. "I've seen the security footage. That wasn't just basic training." James looked down at his hands, weathered from years of service. "Special reconnaissance, 12 years. Thompson whistled low. "That explains it. Those bikers had no idea who they were messing with." "I'd prefer if that information stayed between us," James said quietly. Thompson studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. But you should know. Those men are angry, especially Miller. When they get out, they might come looking for payback." "I'll be ready," James said simply. After giving his statement, James walked through the town center. People nodded to him, some stopping to shake his hand or pat him on the back. It was strange, this sudden recognition. For 3 years since moving back to Oakfield after leaving the army, he had been nearly invisible, just another face in the small town where he'd grown up. When he arrived at the petrol station for his evening shift, Mr. Wilson was waiting for him. The short, balding man seemed nervous, fidgeting with his car keys. "James, I've been thinking," he said. "After what happened last night, I think you deserve more than what I'm paying you." "That's not necessary, Mr. Wilson. No, I insist. A raise and—" Mr. Wilson hesitated. "I'd like to make you head of security for all 3 of my stations in the county." James was surprised. "I'm comfortable where I am, sir." "Please consider it. You'd be training other guards, setting up better security. After last night, I realize how vulnerable we are." Mr. Wilson looked genuinely worried. "Those road wolves have friends. This might not be over." James thought about it. The position would mean more money, which he could certainly use. His army pension only stretched so far, and if there was further trouble coming, perhaps he could help prepare for it. I'll think about it, he promised. That evening, Tom arrived for his shift looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bright with excitement. Everyone at uni was talking about it, he said as soon as James walked in. My flatmates didn't believe me at first when I said I was there. James smiled despite himself. Tom's enthusiasm was infectious. Just do me a favor and keep the stories close to what actually happened. But what actually happened was amazing, Tom insisted. You know what people are calling you? The Guardian, like a superhero or something. James shook his head. I'm no hero, Tom. Just someone who was in the right place at the right time. As the night progressed, James noticed more customers than usual. People came in for small purchases, lingering longer than necessary, stealing glances at him. Some asked questions about what had happened. James answered politely but briefly, uncomfortable with the attention. Just before midnight, Officer Thompson's patrol car pulled up outside. The officer came in, nodding to James. Thought I'd check in, he said. All quiet? So far, James replied. Thompson lowered his voice. The road wolves made bail this afternoon. All except Miller. He had outstanding warrants. Just thought you should know. James thanked him for the information. After Thompson left, he did an extra check of the perimeter, making sure all was secure. He had a feeling that this story wasn't over yet. The road wolves had been humiliated. Men like that didn't forget easily. As he stood in the doorway of the shop, looking out at the quiet forecourt, James felt a familiar tension in his body. The readiness that had kept him alive through 2 decades of military service. He would be prepared for whatever came next. The end. 3 weeks passed without incident. The excitement in Oakfield about the petrol station confrontation had mostly died down, though James still received nods of recognition as he walked through town. He had accepted Mr. Wilson's offer to become head of security for all 3 stations, and spent his days training new guards and improving security measures. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when the motorcycle pulled into the forecourt of Wilson's petrol station. James was there checking the new camera system they had installed. He looked up at the familiar sound of a heavy bike engine, instantly alert. The rider was alone. He cut the engine and sat for a moment, looking at the shop. Then he removed his helmet. James recognized him immediately. Robert Big Rob Miller, the leader of the Road Wolves, the man who had tried to rob the shop with his gang 3 weeks earlier. James stepped outside, positioning himself between Miller and the entrance to the shop where Tom was working. Miller saw him and froze for a moment. Then slowly he dismounted from his bike. I'm not here for trouble, Miller called out, raising his empty hands to show he was unarmed. James didn't move. Why are you here then? Miller walked forward, stopping a respectful distance away. He looked different somehow, less aggressive, more thoughtful. There were dark circles under his eyes. I got out yesterday, he said. The others were released weeks ago, but I had those other charges to deal with. James said nothing, just watched and waited. Miller looked uncomfortable under his steady gaze. Look, I could have sent one of my boys to do this, but I wanted to come myself. He reached into his pocket and James tensed, but Miller pulled out only a wallet. From it, he took several notes and held them out. For the damage, and the stuff we tried to take. James didn't move to take the money. Why would you do that? Miller lowered his hand, looking at the ground. I've had a lot of time to think in that cell, about choices and consequences. He paused, seeming to struggle with what to say next. My dad was military too. Royal Marines. He died when I was 15. After that, I went off the rails. James's expression softened slightly, but he remained alert. I'm sorry about your father. Miller nodded. The thing is, the way you moved that night, it reminded me of him. He used to show me self-defense stuff when I was a kid. Inside the shop, Tom was watching wide-eyed through the window. Other customers had noticed the conversation as well, some taking out their phones, perhaps expecting another confrontation. The road wolves are finished, Miller continued. At least I'm done with them. Getting arrested again. It was a wake-up call. I can't keep living like this. James studied him carefully, looking for signs of deception. He saw none, only a man who seemed tired and perhaps a bit lost. "What will you do now?" James asked. Miller shrugged. "Not sure. Hard to find work with my record. Was thinking of moving up north, making a fresh start." He held out the money again. "Just wanted to make this right before I go." Slowly, James reached out and took the notes. "Mr. Wilson will appreciate this." An awkward silence fell between them. Finally, Miller spoke again. "The other lads, they won't be coming around here anymore. I made sure of that." "I appreciate that," James said. Miller turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. How did you do it? Take on all 5 of us?" "I've been in my share of fights, but I've never seen anything like that." James allowed himself a small smile. "Training, discipline, and a very good reason to stop you." Miller nodded slowly. "My dad used to say something similar, about how the best fighters hope they never have to use what they know." "Your father was right," James replied. As Miller walked back to his motorcycle, James made a sudden decision. "Miller," he called. The former gang leader turned. "I'm starting a self-defense class at the community center, Thursday evenings. If you're still in town, you could come." Miller looked surprised. "Why would you offer that after what I did?" "Everyone deserves a second chance," James said simply. "Sometimes we need to be reminded of better paths." Miller seemed to consider this. "Maybe I will," he said finally, though they both knew it was unlikely. He put on his helmet and started his bike. As Miller rode away, Tom came running out of the shop. Was that him? The leader? What did he want? James held up the money. "To make amends." "And you just let him go?" Tom asked, amazed. "He's already serving his sentence," James replied. "The hardest prison is the one we build for ourselves with poor choices." He looked down the road where Miller's bike had disappeared. In his 20 years of military service, James had seen many men shaped by violence, both giving and receiving it. The truly strong ones were those who found their way back to something better. That night, as James completed his rounds at the petrol station, he felt a sense of closure. The Road Wolves incident was truly over now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities with his expanded role. But for tonight, the petrol station was quiet, the forecourt peaceful under the starry sky. And that was exactly how James liked it. The end.